the lottery as we know it today is set up in part to help fund specifically public education. A lot of times those funds are not getting directly to the schools, right? So again, the whole purpose of me having this conversation is because we're looking at these prize amounts here in the last few months of $1 billion and almost $1 billion. And it's like, well, where's this money going? People's voice. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the People's Voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the People's Voice. Thank you again for checking us out this week. It's greatly appreciated. As always, if you are enjoying the podcast, please feel free to subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe to us on any of the podcast platforms. And also, if you would like to leave a comment, you can reach us on any of my socials. I can be reached at I am Trey Evans on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. I am Trey Evans. That's IAMTREYEVANS. And also, you can reach us at our show Instagram, which is Trey Be Talking. And again, if you're enjoying the podcast, please feel free to subscribe and to share the information. Don't be stingy. Share the information. No, I'm just playing. But I really appreciate everyone who has been checking out the podcast and continue and hope to continue to bring quality information, fact-checked information at that. I'd like to stress that. I'm not just here spewing opinion. So today, I want to talk about a hot topic. Again, I typically stay away from hot topics. I don't even like the term. But, in the last few weeks or maybe last few months, there's been a constant news cycle around, should put a drum roll right here, and I will. Drum roll, please. The lottery. I want to talk about the lottery today, and talking about the lottery, not just in the game itself. And when I'm talking about the lottery, I'm talking about the recent lotteries that have been handing out billions of dollars with a B, and has literally turned everyone into, well, most people. I shouldn't say most people. I don't like to generalize. A lot of people into gamblers, right? Even if it's just for a game, because, people say, well, you can't win it if you're not in it. But I wanted to talk about the lottery today. Talk a little bit about what the lottery is, some of its originations, and then also talk about some of its purposes, or at least what it's designed to do here in the modern day, and of course some criticisms about it, because there are some criticisms surrounding it, especially the specific demographics that typically participate in lotteries. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. I want to talk about the lottery, and should be quite an interesting discussion. So, as always, I like to start with a definition, because, definitions, it's just foundation. It gives you a foundation. And so we can then, build from there to get to a better understanding. So, first thing I wanted to do is just give a basic definition of what a lottery is, right? Not getting into the different types, just what a lottery is. So, and I'm just looking at definition that I pulled up. It says a lottery is a form of gambling that involves the drawing of numbers at random, for a prize. Some governments outlaw lotteries. Currently, I believe in the United States, the Powerball and the Mega Millions lottery is only like in 44, 45 states, something like that. But let me get back. So, lottery is a form of gambling that involves the drawing of numbers at random for a prize. Some governments outlaw lotteries while others endorse it. To the extent of organizing a national or state lottery, it is common some to find some degree of regulation of lotteries by governments. But basically, a lottery is a form of gambling that involves the drawing of numbers at random for a prize. That is a lottery. Okay, so now we have our base definition. That's what a lottery is. So now, now that we have the definition, well, interestingly enough, lotteries are not something of in terms of recent history. I mean, lotteries have been in existence. It's dated. Depending on what you research. I mean, they go all the way back to 200 BC. I was reading about the lottery that the Chinese Han Dynasty had back in 205, 187 BC, 205 BC, somewhere in there. But the lotteries at that time, right, were basically made up of games that help to finance projects for the government. It's attributed to helping to build the Great Wall of China, and it came from lotteries. Now, lotteries then, of course, we're not talking about money, so it probably was a little bit different in terms of how that was set up. Some have, some historians have said it was almost compared to what Keno slips are today, the way that they used to do the lotteries at that time. So this goes back centuries, millenniums. Lotteries have always been a part of a government, or I shouldn't say always, but have been a part of governments and states in terms of how they were able to finance their different entities. Also, in terms of modern history, when you get more towards the 1500s, England was, I guess, mostly noted with having the raffle style lottery that we know today, or I guess some of the originations. Some say France, some say England, some believe Queen Elizabeth I was one that issued basically 4,000, it says 400,000 tickets, and the tickets were basically sold for, I don't know, whatever the amount of money was then. And then the grand prize was £5,000, which obviously back in 1566, 1567, that's a whole lot of money. Anyway, the lottery then was just similar to the way the lottery was designed during the Chinese Han Dynasty. It was designed to create funding for public works. And this was at that time for building ships and for building ports out, which would then go on to sail to various new worlds. And many of you know what that history ended up into. But anyway, I wanted to just give just a little bit of foundation of what the lottery was, some of its originations. Now, in terms of the United States, it can be noted as early as 1600s that lotteries were being conducted here in the United States. Now, again, of course, United States did not get their independence until 1776, but there are records of lotteries being conducted as early as 1600s in Jamestown, Virginia. And again, those lotteries were designated and designed to help generate money to fund not only not only public ventures, but also some private ventures as well. It also led to the financing of roads and libraries and churches and bridges. So the lottery, my point is, the lottery has been around for a long time. I mean, even in 1776, the lottery is contributed or at least credited with being responsible for funding the War of Independence, right? So ironically, England is credited with some of the earliest lotteries in terms of the raffle system. And then in 1776, the Continental Congress voted to use a lottery system to raise money to fight England in the War of Independence. So this is been in history for a long time, right? I wanted to make that a foundation. Now, moving on. So today's lottery. Why am I talking about this today? Well, today, as the lottery as we know it, there's a structure to the lottery, right? And the money is supposed to be dispersed in a certain manner. And there's been a lot of conversation, especially as we've seen these large prizes over the last, definitely this year. I think it's been like 3 or 4 or something like that, either a billion or close to a billion. That money is supposed to be dispersed, right? So what I want to do is kind of break down how that money is dispersed, and then talk about, who should be getting that money, and then again, some of the criticisms behind it. So when the lottery is played, there is basically a pie, right? You got 100% of a pie, and the money that is funneled in. So when you play your $2 bet on a ticket, that money is then supposed to be broken up and sent to various entities within the lottery system. So basically, it's estimated between 50 and 60%. And to make it simple, I'll just use $1. So 50 to 60 cents of every dollar, right, is supposed to be given to the winner of the lottery, right? So you win the lottery. Let's just keep the numbers simple. Lottery is $1 million. Out of that $1 million, let's not do that. Out of all of the money that is given in terms of the revenue, the winner of the ticket gets 60% of all of the revenue that comes in, right? So even though the prize may be $1 million, the actual gross in terms of tickets sold might be $2 million. You get my point. So anyway, 60% of the drawing goes to, or the prize gets paid to the individuals or the individual who won the prize. Now, some estimate again between 25 and 30%, 25% of that is supposed to go to an education fund. Now, not all states put the money into an education fund, right? Out of the 44 states that participate in the lottery, only 27 actually have state funds that this money is supposed to be funneled to. Now, the thing is that even though the money is supposed to be funneled there, some critics have said that that's not happening. A matter of fact, let me play. This is a clip from CBS News. They actually did a story on this, and take a listen to a representative for the state of Michigan as she talks about the allocation of the funds and actually what's occurring as a result of that. Take a listen to this.
Michigan State Representative Sherry Gay Danyogo.
Do you think it's misleading to people?
Absolutely, it is misleading.
And so people who buy tickets thinking, hey, I'm helping education, do you think they're really doing as much as they think they are?
Absolutely. They believe they are, but they're absolutely not benefiting education.
More than $740 million lottery dollars is given to Michigan schools each year. Gay Danyogo says there's no reason the buildings should be in such bad shape.
I think our values and our priorities are not aligned, and we need to dispel the myth that the lottery is helping to improve education, because it hasn't.
And that is one criticism that has been made several times, that even though the lottery as we know it today is set up in part to help fund specifically public education, a lot of times those funds are not getting directly to the schools, right? So again, the whole purpose of me having this conversation is because we're looking at these prize amounts here in the last few months of $1 billion and almost $1 billion. And it's like, well, where's this money going? Because in this piece that you just heard, this was a representative from the state of Michigan. She's talking about Detroit public schools being severely underfunded, and yet when these tickets are paid out, the money is supposed to go into this fund. Now, this is supposed to be money that's in addition to what is already in the state fund or what has already been budgeted for education, right? So if there's $100,000 in there, and I'm just giving a small number, when the lottery is won, then, or I mean, when the lottery is played, all of the revenue that's getting generated in a particular state, that goes into a fund. Obviously, the larger the lottery, the more money is going into a fund. And that money is supposed to be put on top of what has already been budgeted. Not only is that not happening, but in addition, when the money is generated, it's not getting to the schools that need it the most, which again is another criticism of the lottery as we know it today. But kind of going back, because I wanted to jump into that because I thought that really drove home the point here. So going back, when you have the lottery is broken up into a pie, right? So the prizes, 60% of the revenue that is generated goes towards the actual prize, whatever that amount is for the lottery, or the prize is, depending on how many different people win. Then somewhere, and that's kind of rough estimate. It's 50 to 60%, depending on which state that is participating in the lottery. Only 44 states currently participate in the lottery. Then another 25%, maybe 30% is supposed to go towards an education fund. And this education fund is supposed to be in addition to what has already been budgeted for schools. Now, the criticism, as you just heard from the state representative from Michigan, that money is not getting to those schools or not being added to the fund. Another additional 5 to 7% is paid to the actual store, right? So for you go into whatever store, I don't want to name a store, for commercial sakes, but any store or gas station that you go into, every time that retailer or that store gives you a ticket, they get paid between 5 to 7% on that ticket. So that's another additional piece of the pie. So kind of to make the numbers as, clear as possible. Let's just call it 60% gets paid to the person who has won, or the persons who have won the lottery. Let's say 30% is supposed to go towards education. The other 5% is going towards the retailers or the stores who sell the tickets. There's another 3% on top of that goes to the lottery administration. So in every state, there's a lottery administration. There's overhead for employees who do whatever they do at the lottery administration office. I don't know. And then you also have to pay the company that is responsible for printing up the tickets, because there's a company that provides the computer and the paper and the ink for those retailers to print up those tickets. And then, the additional money goes to a designated, or it's supposed to go to basically designated fund, a designated fund, or to the general fund, as they call it depending on which state you're in, right? So that's where that money goes. But again, some of the criticism has been that the money is not going into the fund. And where is the money going? Well, a lot of times, as I said before, that money is bypassing education, and many times it's going towards public works. It might go towards some other revitalization project that is not within the line of education. So one of the reasons why the lottery was even established in terms of modern day lottery was to help the educational fund in various states, and that is not occurring. Another interesting thing that I read was that just breaking down who is playing the lottery, right? Because listen, it's exciting and everybody enjoys it, but it is a form of gambling. And unfortunately, that form of gambling is often occurring in communities where the ability to even generate income is already tough enough. And then you throw on top of that the addictiveness, if you will, of the lottery. That makes it even that much more difficult. I'm reading an article here from smartassets.com, and it says that in general, and this is just on a report and a survey that was done, it says that households with an income of less than $10,000 a year spend almost $597 on tickets. Okay, that's like 6-7% of annual income. And this is according to the New York Times. And because of that, that has led some analysts to propose more gamification of savings, right? So instead of having lottery available in this area, many people are pushing for having the lottery removed and more education about saving and actually building wealth and income. So, that's a very interesting fact when it comes to the lottery itself. In addition, not only is it just from a standpoint of income, but it's also very much in terms of the participation of the lottery. There's a segment of the country or the population that is more likely to play in the lottery than any other. Another criticism of the lottery is that most times, and this is based on studies have shown that people who lose the most on the lottery, right? These are people who are constantly, every time the lottery comes out, regardless of what the amount is, they're going to play. Those who typically lose on the lottery are males, right? And then in terms of African Americans and Native Americans, and those who live in disadvantaged neighborhoods, which I just talked about, because in that New York Times piece, as I mentioned before, they said that, most people within a household income of $10,000 a year spend almost $600 a year on lottery tickets. And then the other criticism that has been out there for quite some time, which I kind of touched on earlier, is that the lottery is gambling. And just like any other form of gambling, it becomes very addictive. So, critics are asking, well, how can you take advantage of a population of people that clearly already have struggles in terms of day-to-day access and availability, but then at the same time, you are not only funding public works and other revitalization projects, but then you're not taking those funds and accurately putting them back into the educational system, which they are intended to be, to uplift those communities and bring them out of the levels of poverty and also the setback that many individuals in those communities have endured. So, there are multiple angles to look at it from. Now, listen, I don't want to sound like, Debbie Downer or Donald Downer, I should say, but, everybody enjoys the possibility of what it can bring. But the whole purpose of the People's Voice is that we want to bring some of the underlying issues or the underlining, conversations that are not being raised regarding this money to the forefront. And, ask your individual state rep, ask your city council person, ask your mayor, ask your senator, where is the money from the lottery? Especially if you're in those communities that are disadvantaged, you're in those communities that have schools that are not properly funded, that don't have the proper assets to properly educate your children. These are the questions that you need to be asking. And I know it seems very trivial, but we're talking about millions and millions of dollars each year that are not getting to the intended individuals. So I would encourage everyone, bring it up, send an email, make a phone call. Hey, this last lottery or these last 3 lotteries that took place, how much of that money is going to the state and how much of that money is going into the educational fund? And when will our schools be benefiting from it? Because as a citizen, especially a tax-paying citizen, you deserve answers regarding that. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Was sitting here listening to all the news about the lottery, and I said, well, where's the money going? Because I'll be honest with you, I didn't pay close attention to it myself until I started doing the research. And, as always, when you do research, you that moment, like, oh, well, somebody needs to answer for this, because there are way too many schools that are struggling that are not, that, would not be struggling, because there's obviously money out there for them to receive the funding for. So that is my time for today. I hope this was informative. As always, we ask that you please share the information, subscribe to the podcast, and if there are any comments or suggestions or feedback, please feel free to contact me on any of my socials, or at Trey B Talking, or at the website Trey Evans. So, as always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the People's Voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute.
People's voice.